very hard to be open-minded, but when it comes to comics, I'm biased. Hello, my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be revisiting my If Books Were Superheroes tag, but this time, it's going to be the BatFam edition. Pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be recommending books and characters and stuff based on Batman characters, specifically the Bat family. I have kept it to the 12 that are kind of the core part, the ones that I know, have experience with, I have read. So if your favorite is not on this list, I'm sorry, I just went with my favorites for this. So if you would like to check out the original If Books Were Superheroes tag, I just redid it yesterday on my channel, so I will link that down in the description box so you can check that out. I'll also have linked the original one where I didn't know how to do my lighting or my makeup or any of that. The first prompt is Nightwing, so recommend a book that is your favorite first book in a series. Should I take a moment to let you guys guess what this book is going to be? Because I think everyone's going to be able to tell. It's going to be The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. This is the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, soon to be getting its own Disney Plus show. I am so ready. I'm so excited. I have been waiting. Listen, I appreciate the movies for what they were, for the fact that they had a fantastic cast. I appreciate them, but just knowing that, like, Rick is actually involved in this new one, I'm excited. If you have never heard of the Percy Jackson series before, this is about, shockingly, Percy Jackson. He is a 12-year-old who has been shipped off to a summer camp because his mother just died in front of him, and it turns out he is a demigod. He wasn't expecting that. He wasn't prepared for it. And he gets thrown right into the middle of this war that's going on, or conflict, I guess. They haven't quite gone into, complete war. That's what they're trying to prevent. But he gets thrown into this conflict between Zeus and Poseidon. Percy, unfortunately, ends up being the one that has to go on a quest to fix the thing that Zeus thinks is wrong. This is such a fun series. If you like Greek mythology and you haven't read this series, I don't know what you're doing with your life at this point. Rick Riordan does such a good job of reimagining Greek mythology and finding new little ways to bring it into the modern world. I mean, I've read this multiple times, but it was always such a fun moment to have a character come in and either immediately know who they were or be sitting there trying to guess who it was until this one detail falls into place and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that person, that myth, I know what we're talking about now. Percy as a character is just wonderful. He's a little bit off the wall, but he also has ADHD. He's very much based on Rick's son, or traits that Rick's son exhibited, I would guess, because the entire way this series started was Rick was telling his son, who had just been diagnosed with ADHD, a story about a really cool kid who also happened to have ADHD. So I really love the story behind this series, and I love the story that is inside the series. So please check it out. Also, I haven't mentioned her yet, but one of my favorite fictional characters of all time is in this series. She's in this series. It's wonderful. The second prompt is Oracle, and that is recommend your favorite futuristic or science fiction novel. So I'm gonna go with Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey. This is the first book in the Expanse series, and I absolutely adore it. It follows two different timelines. We've got Miller, he's a detective. He's looking for a woman who has gone missing. Her family is very rich. They want to know what happened to her, and so he's kind of going out and trying to figure out, put all the pieces together to figure out where this woman is, what happened to her, what's going on. And then we also have James Holden. He is the XO on the Canterbury, and he and a small team of people end up going out to check out a distress signal, and while they are out checking out the distress signal, someone comes and blows up the main ship. So they're kind of stranded, and it's about them having to deal with the fact that they are in the middle of this conflict that seems to be going on between Earth, Mars, and a third party, and they don't know what's going on, and they're just trying not to die. I love this. I have multiple times compared the main couple in this series to adult Perkabeth. They are the exact same dynamic as Annabeth and Percy, but as adults. This is obviously not the only reason that you should read this series, but the thing that keeps me coming back time and time again is the crew from the Canterbury that we get to know. If you are looking for found family, Jem, Naomi, Alex, and Amos just become the epitome of that trope. I love them so much. I do find this to be a very accessible science fiction series. They really prioritize character and plot over technical details, and I really appreciate that. Their world building is just seamlessly built in to the story. You don't even know that they are giving you world building half the time until you go, oh yeah, that is a detail that I know that because they told me this. Oh, okay, and this is going to have greater implications on what's going on. Like, it's great. And the way that they kind of take the initial problem that we get in this book, the initial thing that's going on, I don't want to get into it too much because it's weird, but the way they take that initial problem and have stretched it out through at least 7 books at this point. I'm guessing all 9, considering we still haven't resolved this thing, but they keep finding new and interesting ways for this initial problem to be revisited, to be interacting with the world. It never appears in the same way twice, if that makes sense. Like, if you've read a couple of these books, you'll understand what I am talking about. Prompt number 3 is Red Hood, and that is to recommend a book that was better the second time. I am going to recommend Graceling by Kristin Cashore. This is about Katza. She is a Graceling in this world where people will have different powers or abilities. Hers is that she's really good at killing people. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you read the book, it will make sense. And then she runs into this guy named Poe, who is also a Graceling. He's from another kingdom. I don't entirely remember why they have to leave the city, actually, at this point. I just know that they kind of end up having to go cross-country somewhere, and then they end up being chased because they have made off with the daughter of the king, because the king really should not have this child anywhere near him. And there's so much going on in this book, and it's a wild ride from start to finish. And I don't think the first time I read it, I really appreciated what Kristin Cashore was doing with the characters, with her commentary on not feminism, but women's places in society and the options that women were given and all kinds of stuff like that. And there is a lot going on in this series, and you have to really sit and think about it to see all of it. And I don't think I caught that the first time. I remember being kind of meh about it the first time. It was good, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that I was wild for. And then I just even if I hadn't been doing a read along for this series, I probably would have gone through the entire series because it grabs you and it pulls you forward, and Katza and Poe turn up later, and they're just wonderful. I love them so much. The 4th prompt is Red Robin, and that is a low-key book that wowed you. Some of y'all might not understand why this prompt is this prompt, but go Google Robin Showgirl Wings. You'll understand what I'm talking about. I absolutely have to plug Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. So this I consider low-key for a couple of reasons. First off, I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. This is a very, very good book. It is an underrated middle grade, and I feel like more people need to read this. So this is about a girl who lives in Syria, and she and her mother end up coming to the United States to stay with some family members when the violence really picks up over there. She's just basically trying to get through middle school in this. The most immediate stakes in this book is she's trying to get into the middle school play. She's trying to learn English. This is a book that is obviously, based on the title, about home. It's also about family. It is about growing up. There is just so much packed into this one short novel in verse, and the way that Jasmine Warga is able to take you through this girl's story is it's done masterfully, and will have you in tears most likely at the end of the book, because it's just there's a moment. It's a spoiler moment, but there's a moment, and it just will have your heart trying to just break into pieces. Prompt number 5 is Orphan, and that is to recommend a book you wished more people talked about. For those of you that don't know, Orphan is the current moniker of Cassandra Cain, who was the second Batgirl. The book that I'm going to recommend is a one that I'm always recommending this book. I'm always talking about this book. You guys have seen me throw this book at you before, but that is A Wounded Name by Dot Hutchison. This is one of the only valid Hamlet version things, retellings that I like. I don't like Hamlet, but I like this book. I don't understand it. Don't ask me. It just is what it is. This is almost like a dark academia version of Hamlet. It takes place at a boarding school called Elsinore Academy, and it is about Ophelia as she's watching kind of Hamlet do this whole spiral into whatever, madness, I guess. I guess madness is what Hamlet spirals into. The entire disaster that Hamlet causes, this is about her watching this happen. I will warn you, there are trigger warnings for suicide, major trigger warnings for suicide. Ophelia is very depressed in this book. Well, If y'all have read Hamlet, you know why there are trigger warnings for suicide. Although it's more complicated than that. It's weird. It's weird. Also, just know there is an assault scene in this because it's Hamlet. That's why this is very dark. This is very grim. There is just a lot of messed up stuff that happens in this book, but it is also beautifully written. Like, it is one of the prettiest books I have ever read. Dot knows how to construct a sentence and create an atmosphere. It's very, like, kind of mystical. Like, if you like Celtic and Irish folklore, this ties into that a little bit. There's a little bit about the banshee. This is, like, it's hard to explain, but also, if you like Hamlet and you haven't read this, then you need to read this. Next on the list, we have Batgirl, and that is to recommend a book that you are glad you got spoiled for. I will be completely and totally honest, I actually don't know if Stephanie Brown is still Batgirl. Last I checked, I do believe we had gone back from Babs to Stephanie. If I'm wrong about that, just say spoiler when you do your video. They are the same person. So, anyways, book I am going to say I'm glad I got spoiled for is going to be The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. If I had not known how this book was going to end, I would have hated it very much, and yet I gave it 5 stars. This is about Hazel Grace, and she has cancer. She has, I believe it is a form of lung cancer. I don't remember the exact name. All I know is that her lungs do not work. They are very bad lungs, and she is currently living with cancer. Like, it's not in remission, but it is not progressing any further. So they found a drug that's kind of keeping it from completely destroying her body. And then she ends up meeting this boy named, I think is it August? I wanted to say Isaac, but that's not it. Augustus. She ends up meeting this kid named Augustus through their kind of cancer support, or their survivors support group, and they end up striking up a relationship and going on this whole quest because she's obsessed with this one author, and so they decide that they're going to go visit and see if they can convince him to write the rest of a series or something like that. There is a book involved. I don't remember. All I remember is that John Green wrote 4 pages of it, and then there was like just an entire book of just those 4 pages over and over and over again. That's a movie trivia thing. I'm weird like that. Yeah, I ended up really liking this because I went into it knowing what it was really about and knowing that I should not get attached to the thing that I usually get attached to. I'm being so vague here, but that's because I don't want to spoil it for anyone else, unless you want me to spoil it for you. But I think at this point, we all know. We all know at this point, probably, but like, here I am trying to be a good booktuber just in case someone's never read this book before or heard of it and they have just crawled out from underneath a bookish rock. Who knows? I don't know if I would still recommend it, but I did really enjoy reading it, and I think I read this entire book in like 2 sittings. Like, I stayed up till 1 a.m. finishing this book. Yeah, that doesn't, usually I'm in bed at like 11, the book's down, I gotta go to bed. Prompt number 7 is Robin, a character you did not like at first. Now, I know people think of Robin as like this goofy, lovable kid, but if anyone's been reading recent Batman stuff in the last 10 or so years, y'all know that Damian had a rocky start. However, he has grown on at least me, so, you know, I know he can be a hard one, especially if, like, you're a huge Tim Drake fan, considering that he did try to kill Tim at one point. But, you know, he doesn't do that anymore. It's fine. So this was a hard one for me to kind of figure out, but I think we finally settled on The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. I read this way back before I even had BookTube. I read this back when I was doing my book blog that is no longer active, and I'm not giving you that. I despised this book. Like, I didn't like it when I read it, and I actually have not reread it. But I did end up liking the series as a whole, because I did continue on with the series, and I think once you've seen the full arc of what's going on, this is a much more, for me at least, likable book, because I understood some of the choices the author had made. I was less mad at the way it ended once I'd read the whole series and seen that, like, what we're shown at the end of that book is not necessarily where the story ended and all of that stuff. And so I ended up liking it much better in retrospect than I did when I read it. Still freaking hurt though. Still freaking hurt. Prompt number 8 is Batwoman, and that is to recommend a book or character that challenges traditional gender roles. I reread it back in 2019 and was surprised by the way, like, I knew certain parts of it were definitely challenging gender, but I was really surprised with the little details that the author put in there to just say, listen, like, gender doesn't have to define a person, like, just low-key ways. That is Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. Now, on the surface, very obviously a book that's going to be the traditional, like, challenging of gender roles. So we have a Cimarine who is not really into, like, being a princess. She is a tomboy. She does not want to be dancing and courting princes, and she personally thinks that the princes that her parents keep trying to set her up with are kind of stupid, and she's 16, and she's like, why would I want to get married right now? And so she runs away and asks a dragon to basically kidnap her. Like in this world, quite often princesses end up carried off by dragons. They become a dragon's princess, a knight comes to rescue them, they get married to that knight, blah, 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 fairy tale, yada, yada, yada. Cimarine, in fact, volunteers to be Kazul, the dragon's princess. There are a couple of, like, small details that I really enjoy. Like, for number 1, dragons in this book do not choose a gender until they've reached, like, 2 or 3 years old. And then the other, like, kind of small detail that I really appreciate about this, and the way that Patricia C. Reed portrays and handles and talks about gender to some extent, is that, like, the king of the dragons can be a man or a woman. Like, king is just the title that they use and is not assigned to a specific gender, and I really like that. I remember liking that as a kid, and I liked it this time around too. And I also just I like Cimarine. Like, this is one of the early, like, not like other girls type tropes, but, like, not in a way that shames the other princesses, because Cimarine does end up making friends with 2 other more, like, traditional princesses, specifically one other traditional princess. And, like, there's no shame between them. It's just like, yeah, you like things different than I like things. So I really appreciate that. So the next book we need to talk about is Batwing. He is our newest, like, the newest edition as of my reading of the comics, where I am in the comics. The newest edition is Duke Thomas. So obviously you're going to be recommending a new favorite. I have to talk about Where the Rhythm Takes You by Sarah Doss. This is a retelling of Persuasion set in Tobago. You guys have heard me talk about this over and over and over again, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought she did a fantastic job of taking the things that make Persuasion and translating them to the character, situation, and setting that she chose. We are following Raina in this. Raina is 18. She's just finished high school. She is about to take over, like, her mom's hotel, and she's dealing with the fact that her father has also, like, brought in people to help him run this hotel, that she doesn't entirely agree with their vision. They want to change a lot of things. They want to do a lot of stuff that she just doesn't think is in keeping with how her mom would have wanted things done, and her mom is gone, so she feels like she has to carry on mom's legacy. I loved this. I love the characters. I love the way the relationship between Raina and Aiden was, like, put together, because, that's a key part of Persuasion. Like, she has an ex that he went off back to the States, and then he came back in this book, very famous, with a whole bunch of other famous people, and they're like, hey, Raina, can you help us by being our guide on the island, because we want to really make this special for Aiden. It's funny, it's hilarious. Like, she was not expecting that to happen, puts her in a spot. I love it so much. It's wonderful. I highly recommend this. I think that this is a great, especially if you're looking for, like, more the kind of, like, transitioning into college YA, this is a good one to pick. Okay, so for number 10, the BatFam would not be complete without Alfred Pennyworth. So for that, I want you to recommend a book that is always there for you. So I am going to hold up a copy that I actually do not read anymore, because if I crack this book open one more time, it might fall apart, and that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I just wanted y'all to see, like, how beat up this poor book is. I have tabbed it. It's just been through a rough time with the number of times that I have read this book and stuck it in my bag and, like, beat it up. It's got to be like 4 or 5 times by this point. If you haven't seen the movie or heard about this book, it's about a woman named it's about a young woman named Sophie Hatter. She ends up getting cursed by the Witch of the Waste to be an old woman. She reacts in the most reasonable manner to this turn of events, by going, none of my friends and family should ever be able to see me like this, and runs off into the wilderness and gets caught up with the wizard Howl. She volunteers to be his housekeeper. He has a moving castle, and he's also known for eating girls' hearts. That's his legend among her town of, I don't remember, it's like, she's in Ingary, and I don't remember what the name of her town is, and I don't know why I'm looking, because it doesn't matter. Market Chipping. She lives in Market Chipping. I love this book so much. I love Sophie. I love her sisters. I love her stepmom. I love Hal. I love Calcifer. I love Michael. This is such a fun story, and I don't think people talk about it enough, because like if people knew this existed, certain other books that also take place kind of in Britain and kind of not would probably like just pale in comparison for them, because she does such a good job of being really clever and careful with her words. The way Diana Wynne Jones is able to build a sentence and like introduce you to character and describe things, and also keep things light and fun and exciting, but also give them meaning and make you think about things, and like have women supporting women. It's good. It is good. We also don't follow the evil stepmother trope. Also, if you're the kind of person that is going, like, you enjoy like really funny chapter titles, this is the one for you. Like, we have In Which Howl Expresses His Feelings with Green Slime, just like iconic scene in the movie. We have In Which Sophie Becomes Howl's Old Mother. In which, where is it? Where's the one? I can't remember In Which Sophie Expresses Her Feelings with Weed Killer. Like, lots of feelings in this book. It's good. Read it. I destroyed this book. Like, what do you think? What else can I tell you to get you to read this book? We are now getting to the two, arguably outside of the first one, that have my heart the most, that I love the most, the ones that got me into being a Batman fan. And first, obviously, we got to say, go with Catwoman. And for that, I want you to recommend me a book that has stolen your heart. I am going to recommend Xoxo by Xoxo. This is about Jenny, and she ends up going back to Korea with her mother. Jenny's grandmother is very sick. She has a surgery coming up, and so Jenny's mom decides she's going back to Korea to take care of the grandma, and then Jenny's like, well, why don't I just go back with you, because there's like this very prestigious art school that I could go to finish my final year of high school before I get into college. Jenny is like a fantastic cellist. She has chances of like properly being on like one of the big orchestras, that kind of stuff. She's talking about Juilliard. Like, she's good. She is good at what she does. When she gets there, she actually ends up running back into this guy that she had a chance encounter with at the very beginning of the book, and he turns out to be a K-pop idol. And so it's about them kind of like navigating the fact that he is a K-pop idol and technically not supposed to date, but they're also falling in love, and she's also dealing with school and the fact that like there's so much pressure on her in this final semester to get everything she needs to get ready to go to the schools that she wants to go to. It's a lot, but it was so cute and sweet. Their relationship is just so much fun. And then also Xoxo does a fantastic job of creating like side characters, both in her like friends and his friends, and I just had so much fun reading this book. If you can get the audiobook, I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was really good. Especially if you do not know like Korean and aren't sure how to pronounce things, the audiobook is definitely going to help you out there. So I love it. I recommend it. It was such a good book. And for number 12, we have to go back to the OG, Batman. For this one, I want you to recommend me a book that got you into reading. So this is actually a hard one for me, because I don't remember a lot of the books that I read as a kid. I mean, technically, I guess we could recommend Dr. Seuss, because apparently that's the one that I brought to my mother and was like, please teach me to read so I can read it myself. My mother was a little freaked out by that. But there are some books that just really solidified my love of stories, and especially of like fairy tales and retellings, and one of them is Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. I read this like way back when it originally came out, I believe. When was that? Let me make sure I'm right about this. This originally came out, this came out in 98. I read this back when it was a brand new thing. This one obviously is not the copy that I got then. The way that this particular Cinderella retelling works is, in this world, all children get a gift from their fairy godmother, and the gift that Ella's fairy godmother gave her was that she would always be obedient. And so Ella, when given a direct order, has no choice. It's a problem, obviously. It's not fun, but because she has the mom that she has and her dad's away a lot and he doesn't know, she manages to get through her childhood relatively, like, okay. And then her mom dies, and she gets a new stepmother, and she also happens to fall in love with the prince. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that just read it. It's so good. Gail Carson Levine, she writes such good books. She writes such good books, I say, having read like 3 of them. 2 of them are some of my favorite books of all time. If you haven't read The Two Princesses of Bamar, you should also read that one, but that definitely, I read this way before I read that one. It's good, it's fun, it's witty. Ella as a main character is just delightful. The prince I really like. He's all right. He's not terrible. He's not anything special to write home about, but like they work as a cute little couple, and I think that it's really like it takes an interesting look at fairy tales and fairy tale lands and all of that kind of stuff, and definitely like left a mark on me as both a reader and a writer. So okay, so that is the If Books Were Superheroes tag BatFam edition. So people that I am tagging, I am going to tag all of the co-hosts doing BookTube Beta with me. So that's going to be, hold on, who's in the chat? This time around, it's Brianna, obviously, from 4 Paws in a Book, because she's the one that started it. We're going to have Cal with Retrieving Books. We're going to have Bree over at Bree McKay. We have Rye from Rye's Reading Corner. We have Merritt from Merritt Worthy. I think that's everyone who's kind of sort of doing BookTube Beta this month. And then I'm also going to tag Michelle from Thor Wants Another Letter because they are my Batman buddy. So if you're interested in being tagged, go ahead, do the tag, let me know you did it, like tag me, whatever, however that works. I think we can do that on YouTube now. I want to know that you did it because I want to know what your answers are. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I will have the original tag linked up here in case you haven't checked that out yet. And then whatever is newest on my channel over here, we're having a lot of new videos this time around because I'm doing BookTube Beta. So like, I am sure there is plenty for you to check out, something for everyone on my channel right now. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye! No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because then some people are going to add Harley Quinn, and she's not, guys. She's not. I don't care what Gotham City Sirens makes you think. She is not. Pam's not. Eddie's not. Like, they're not part of the family. At least not in canon. I know in fanon stuff happens, but not in canon.